This video contains major spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2 and, potentially, for The Last of Us Season 2. You have been warned. Joel's death in The Last of Us Part 2 was both set up and executed really well and took place at the right point in the story. Just saying that, even years after the release of the game, we'll already have people tapping away angrily at the keyboard to tell me why I'm wrong. So let me explain. Criticisms of the decision to kill Joel in the game generally take the same few forms. That it was a plot contrivance which required Joel to act wildly out of character and giving his identity away and trusting strangers. That it happened too early and suddenly in the story. And that it was disrespectful to the character, either in the brutal manner of his death, or for some simply the fact that he died at all. The idea that Joel's death happened too early is easily dealt with. It is the inciting incident of the story, the reason for everything that follows, and if the writers held it off until later, then all we are left with is a longer period without the actual plot happening. That might suit some, who simply wanted more of Joel and Ellie having adventures and fighting infected, but it doesn't suit the world of The Last of Us. Unlike a more popcorn franchise like Uncharted, The Last of Us is not set in a world where its characters can simply keep enjoying a succession of unlikely adventures until it's time to retire. It's a darker and more grounded world where violence has weight and deaths are unceremonious, brutal and cruel. Joel is well aware that he is not a hero, and that such a death waits for him at some point, as he comments at numerous points in the first game. It's in this vein that a hero's death, going down in a blaze of glory perhaps while defending Ellie, was always as unlikely as him dying of natural causes. He has done a lot of bad things in his time, and of course one would catch up with him at some point. This ties into whether the death was disrespectful to Joel's character. Within the story it was disrespectful, of course, and intended to be. Abby and her friends felt only hatred for him, so why anyone would expect him to act any differently is beyond me. Torturing him and spitting on his corpse is within character for what we later learn of them, as much as Negan whooping and quipping while beating Glenn to death with Lucille in The Walking Dead, or Joffrey gleefully betraying his word by ordering the sudden execution of Ned Stark in front of his crying daughter. Does this mean that the writers were disrespectful to Joel though? I've no time for some of the nonsense conspiracy theories that sprung up around the game, particularly the idea that Neil Druckmann went out of his way to kill Joel because he hated the character and wanted to impose his own vision on the world. He already did impose his own vision on The Last of Us by creating it, by writing it, and by basing Joel's actions at the end of the first game on the idea, inspired by his own fatherhood, of the unfathomable lengths we will go to for those we love, especially a parent for a child. As a showrunner on the TV show, he underlined this because, if anything, the show makes even more explicit than the game that Joel had no choice and that he had to do what he did. Part 2 goes further than this, by at no point having his saving Ellie be the cause of his condemnation. Ellie tells Abby that it's her fault and there's no cure because of her, but Abby didn't kill Joel over the loss of the cure. She killed him because he killed her dad. Ellie regrets not dying as a catalyst for the cure, but it's the fact that Joel lied to her in the aftermath, in his view to protect her from the truth, that causes the rift between them. She says she wants to try and forgive him, not after he repents his actions, but after he still insists that he would do what he did all over again. Whatever other acts might stain Joel's conscience, saving Ellie is not one of them. If the game was all about disrespecting Joel and making him out to be the villain, as the most conspiracy-minded detractors claim, then it wouldn't work so hard to make you angry at his death. That is, after all, the intent of the scene. We are supposed to be angry that he died, to want retribution on his killers, in order to get fully into Ellie's vengeful mindset. Only once we have seen how far that pushes her, and the negative toll it takes, are we finally shown Abby's point of view. Even then, it has to be noted that the brutal, drawn-out nature of Joel's death isn't praised. It's the cause of a significant rift between Abby and her friends, particularly Mel and Owen. Mel says Joel may have deserved his fate, but she wishes she didn't take part in it. Owen, arguably the conscience of the group, not only expresses concern over her pursuing vengeance from the start, both in the aquarium and when overlooking Jackson.
Abby, I want what you want, but not at any cost.
but also scorns her actions in the boat scene at the end of Seattle Day 1.
Sorry I grew up. You should try it.
Oh yeah, how do I do that? Should I go find the people that killed my family? Cut into them? I could torture them until they're crying, you know?
If you saw the game as insisting Joel was a villain, then it means that putting you in Abby's shoes for the second half worked. You saw her point of view, except that you pulled yourself out of the story to ascribe that point of view to the writers rather than the character they had written. This is understandable, given the attachment people have to Joel and how uncomfortable it is to see him from a different perspective, especially with the extra immersion games offer of being a character rather than just watching them. But it still doesn't mean that the writers hated Joel. It doesn't change that Joel was Druckmann's creation, and that his most controversial actions were drawn from Druckmann's perspective on fatherhood and what he might do in that same situation. As for how Joel's death happened, it has been so often mischaracterized and caricatured by detractors that it's easy, especially for those who hate it but never played it, to miss what actually happened. The common view is that Abby happened upon Joel in entirely serendipitous circumstances, and that he and Tommy simply offered up everything about themselves to an obviously hostile group who vastly outnumbered them. This is a nonsense. The original intent was for Abby to infiltrate Jackson, to locate Joel within the community, and to finally lure him away. The reason for this changing is simple and obvious enough if you think about it for half a second. Pacing. The story of the game is the consequences of Joel's death, not the lead up to it. And especially in an action game, this would slow everything down far more than the version of the prologue we got. Just as in the first game, it would have been a tedious slog to have Joel and Tess spend ages searching for a random firefly than for Marlene to happen upon them after they killed Robert. What happens also feeds into Abby's characterization and arc. Her row with Owen speaks to the same impulsive need for vengeance at all costs that we see in Ellie parting ways with Jesse on day 3, whilst Owen's position of being unwilling to take on a well-organised city speaks to how tired he is of war, as we discover on Abby Day 1, exacerbated by the prospect of fatherhood. So she sets out on her own in search of the patrol Owen saw. This patrol, it has already been established by the conversation between Maria and Jesse in Ellie's earshot, is Tommy and Joel. She is on their trail even before the numbers of infected amass into a horde, with both her and the brothers shepherded into the same place by the threat and by the lack of any other nearby safety. This might be convenient for pacing, but every step of it is established in the narrative and it doesn't happen by magic. Just as the convenience of Marlene meeting Joel and Tess is established by Robert stealing their guns, selling them to the Fireflies, and the Fireflies needing a smuggler's service. Abby discovers who Joel and Tommy are in the aftermath of the gondola fight. At this point, rather than an idle conversation, the three are barricaded into the lodge and expecting infected to barge through the door at any moment. That is the brothers' focus, for obvious reasons. Tommy tells Abby who they are when he sees panic overtaking her, trying to comfort her because they need their companion to be calm and capable for whatever battle is about to come their way. Learning their names, if you pay attention to the acting, which is so well done that even her expressions and the movements of her eyes convey so much, you can see in that moment that Abby isn't just reining in her panic, she is calculating. We already know from her conversation with Owen that she is here in search of someone. That's why she wanted to corner a patrol. The information she wanted of them being the location of the person she sought. It's now becoming clear that Tommy and/or Joel is her target. The brothers, meanwhile, are focused on the horde and what to do. Joel is convinced that they cannot make it back to town in the current conditions and needs somewhere else to regroup, but cannot think of any such safe haven. This gives Abby her in.
Tommy, we cannot stay here! The horses ain't making it all that
My
way!
My friends are at a mansion just north of here.
She offers the place she has holed up as refuge, and Joel recognises the place she described as well as the truth in his statements about it being fortified. The ride is shorter than that all the way back to Jackson. They have a chance, but as a result, so does Abby. It's here, before Joel has said his own name even once, that his fate is sealed. When they reach the Baldwin place, the Horde is in hot pursuit. Pinning them against the gates and using Molotovs takes care of the threat, but the blizzard is raging even more violently now. The only sensible option is to take shelter inside until it passes. At this point, Joel and Tommy saved Abby from an infected, and she in turn led them to refuge from the Horde and gave them space to catch their breath. This doesn't make Joel entirely drop his guard, as we can see from the way his eyes take in everything around him, but he is several years removed from his life as a smuggler and his time on the road in dangerous territory with Ellie. Jackson is a town which thrives not just on what it produces in town, but on the trade of passers-by and growth from new arrivals, which is why Tommy starts his sales pitch. They protect themselves, but they do not close themselves off or view outsiders with the level of automatic, violent distrust that the WLF, Seraphites, or far worse factions like Hunters and Rattlers do. This isn't a plot contrivance specifically to engineer Joel's death, but a specific part of the town's character. Regardless, had this moment been the first time Abby and the others realised who Tommy and Joel were, they would have stood a fighting chance. We see Manny, Nick and the others go on alert at Joel's name, but they're still sitting, taken by surprise at the news. Abby, however, knew already who they were and had planned this moment whilst on the retreat from the infected. It's why she so quickly leaves the horses and marches inside, determination set on her face. Even as Owen tries to lecture her for going off alone and question her about the newcomers, she carries on to, as we will shortly learn, grab a shotgun ready for what comes next. That blast spares her friends into action, but it would not have happened so quickly had she not already learned Joel's identity. Far from the caricature of this scene where Joel and Tommy lazily break character and give themselves away, inviting the attack after Abby magically found them from nowhere, every step leading up to this point was telegraphed to those paying attention. Because good writing means showing and not telling, none of this is spelled out in exposition. It's conveyed in meaningful expressions, eye movements and subtleties of dialogue that take on greater meaning in retrospect. Which is why some players are likely to be as taken by surprise as Joel. And those who insist that it is bad writing insert exposition that was never there when they parody the moment. In fact, the death was well earned, not just by the brutal world built around this story, but in every beat which lays the foundation for this moment, without ever announcing that it was about to happen. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like and consider subscribing to keep up to date with all my content. Like the video that just popped up, which YouTube thinks you should watch next. This is a Patreon and member supported channel, so if you want to become a member and unlock custom badges and emojis, early access to my videos, and your name in the credits, then click the join button below. Thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.